Welcome back to Told After Dark. Tonight is different. Tonight we are going outside. There's something about the woods that human beings have never quite made peace with. We've lived beside them for thousands of years, and for thousands of years told each other stories about what lives inside them. Not animals, not weather, something else. Tonight I have 4 stories. 4 people who went into the woods, walking, camping, hiking, just passing through and came out changed. Each of them sent me their accounts because they needed someone to hear it. They said, "I don't know what I saw, I only know what happened." 4 stories, lights low, let's go into the dark. The first story comes from a woman I'll call Helen. She's 46, from North Yorkshire. She's been a dog walker professionally for nearly 15 years. She knows the countryside around her village better than most people know their own house. She knows every path, every style, every stretch of woodland. She's told me she doesn't walk this particular route anymore. And in her own words, whatever whistled back. I want to say from the start, I'm not a nervous person. I've been walking dogs alone in fields and woodlands since I was 30 years old. Early mornings, late evenings, midwinter. I've never once been afraid of being alone outside, until last October. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, about 4 o'clock, so the light was already going. I had 3 dogs, 2 Labradors belonging to a family in the village, and my own collie, Bess. I know the woodland route we were on so well I could walk it blindfolded. About 40 minutes in, through a stretch of old birch woodland and out the other side onto a moor path back to the village. Bess has been here with me for 8 years. She's absolutely steady. Nothing rattles her. About 15 minutes into the woodland stretch, Bess stopped. Not slowed down, but stopped, dead. 4 legs planted. Head low, ears flat. 2 Labradors bumped into her and looked confused. They're happy idiots, those 2. But Bess didn't move. She was staring into the trees to her left, completely rigid. I've seen her do this maybe twice in 8 years. Both times there was a deer in the undergrowth. I looked where she was looking. The birch trees, they're white, barked. Though even in low light you can see between them reasonably clearly. I scanned the tree line, nothing obvious, no movement, no sounds from the undergrowth. I waited 30 seconds, Bess didn't move. I whistled the way you do, a single lone note to test if something would startle and move. Something whistled back. Not an echo, not a bird, a whistle. A single lone note from the deep in the trees, maybe 40 meters off the path. It was a human whistle. I stood there and I felt the hair on my arms go up. Not because of the sound itself, walkers pass through these woods sometimes. That's a right of way. But because the gap between my whistle and the response. It was too fast. No pause, no did I hear something hesitation. Instant response. Like whatever was in those trees had been waiting for me to make a sound. Bess still hadn't moved. Her legs were shaking slightly. Pulled all 3 dogs close and I started walking. Not running. I didn't want to run. Some instinct told me very clearly not to run, but quickly. Direct along the path. I heard it 3 more times before we got out of the trees, always from roughly the same distance to my left, always keeping pace, a low whistle, same single note. Every time I made any sound, when I stopped, silence, when I moved a branch or my boot cracked, something whistled. Like it was mimicking me, like it found it funny. We came out the other side of the woodland and onto the moor path, and I did not look back. Not once. I walked straight to the village, I put the Labradors in and I drove home. That night I rang a friend who's a countryside ranger, a man who spent 30 years in the area. I described it without telling him where I was. He went very quiet, and then he said, "Which woods?" I told him. There was another pause. "Yeah," he said, "don't go back in there alone." I asked him what it was. He said, "I don't know, but that's not the first time I've heard that from someone who's walked through them. Just don't whistle in those woods, and don't answer if something whistles at you." Too late for that advice. We're on a different route now, and 20 minutes to every walk. Bess has been fine since, back to her steady, unbothered self. But sometimes at dusk, when we're near the edge of any woodland, she does that thing again. Stops, ears flat, staring. And I don't look where she's looking, not anymore. Story 2 comes from a man I'll call Callum, 28, from the Scottish borders. He went camping with 2 friends last summer, a spot they had used before, nothing unusual about it. His friends don't remember what he's about to tell you. He says that's almost the worst part. In his words, "Only I saw it." There were 3 of us, me, my mate, Fraser, and his girlfriend Meg. We'd done this trip twice before, campsite in the trees above a river valley up in the borders. No facilities, no other people usually, just trees and the sound of the water below. We set up camp Friday evening, fire going by 9, drinks out, the usual. It was a good night, relaxed, we turned in around midnight. I woke up, I checked my phone, 2:15. I don't know what woke me, not a sound, not a dream, I just opened my eyes. The tent was dark, obviously. Asia was asleep to my left. The tent material, it's light nylon. When there's light outside, you can see it through the fabric. Faint but visible. And there was a light outside. This should not have been the case. We were deep in the trees. No other campers. The moon was barely a crescent that night. I'd noticed before we turned in. There shouldn't have been enough light to glow through the tent. I unzipped as quietly as I could and popped my head up. About 6 meters away, between the trees, there was a light. I don't know how else to describe it really. The light, not a torch, wasn't directed. It wasn't moving like someone holding a torch. It was just present, steady and pale. Like something was glowing from within the trees. Roughly the size of a person. I watched it for, I think, 2 or 3 minutes. It didn't move, and it didn't flicker. I genuinely could not account for it. My mind was running through every option. Someone else's camp? Too deep off any path? Reflection? Of what? There was nothing out there to reflect. I reached back into the tent and shook Fraser's arm. He woke up instantly. What? And I whispered to him to come look. He crawled out beside me. He looked in the direction I was pointing. He said, "What am I looking at?" I said, "The light between those big pines." He looked for a long time, then he said, "Mate, I don't see anything." I looked back. The light was still there, perfectly visible, steady, 60 meters away from the trees. I pointed directly at it. Fraser looked exactly where I was pointing. He said, "Callum, there's nothing there, mate." He wasn't winding me up. I know Fraser. He can't keep a straight face for anything. He was tired and confused and generally couldn't see what I was looking at. He went back to bed. I sat at the tent entrance and watched the light for another 20 minutes. It never moved and it never changed. And then gradually, so gradually, I almost missed it happen. It faded. I didn't sleep again. In the morning I said nothing to either of them. We packed up, walked back to the car, I About a week later, I mentioned it to Fraser. Casual, like I was remembering something. He had absolutely no memory of me waking him up. He said, "You never woke me up. I slept straight through." I have thought about this for 8 months. There are 2 explanations I keep coming back to. The first is that I was dreaming or sleepwalking, but Fraser is right, I never woke him up at all, and the whole thing was some vivid, convincing dream. The second is that I woke him and he generally cannot remember it, which is normal. People forget disturbed sleep, and that what I saw in those trees was real. I don't know which one is true, but I know what I saw. And I know that for those 20 minutes watching that pale light between the trees, I felt not afraid exactly, something stranger than that. Like it knew I was watching, and it didn't mind. Halfway through tonight, and we still have 2 more stories to go. Both of them happened in broad daylight. That's the part that should stay with you. If something happened to you out there in the woods on a path somewhere that felt wrong, send it to the email in the description. Your story might be the next one read on the channel. Story 3 is from a woman I'll call Diane. She's 53, from the Forest of Dean in Gloucestershire. She's a landscape photographer, been shooting outdoors in all weathers for over 20 years. She's completely comfortable alone in remote places. She sent me this account in a state of some distress. She was not alone, and in her words, the man who watched me shoot. I want to be clear about what I do and how I work before I tell you this. I go out early, often before dawn, to shoot in natural light. I'm alone a lot. I'm used to meeting people in unexpected places. Dog walkers, runners, other photographers. It doesn't startle me. What startled me was this man. It was a Saturday in March. Early, I parked up, just after 6. Walked about 2 miles into the forest to a spot where the light comes through the canopy beautifully at sunrise. I know that spot well. I'd been there half a dozen of times. I was setting up my tripod when I noticed him. He was standing about 30 meters away between the trees to my right, and just standing there, watching me. My first thought was a runner who'd stopped, but he wasn't dressed for running. Dark trousers and a long coat, standing completely still with his arms at his side. I looked at him, and he looked at me. I raised my hand with a small wave, a universal woodland greeting. He didn't respond. Odd, but not alarming. Some people just awkward. I turned back to my camera and got on with the shoot. When I looked back 5 minutes later, he was still there. Same spot, same stillness, same posture. Now this started to bother me, not in a dramatic way, just quite unease. I kept working, but I was very aware of him. Every time I checked, he hadn't moved, hadn't come closer, hadn't left, just watching. About 20 minutes I decided to take the initiative and walk over. I'd rather know who he was than keep wondering. I'm not a timid person. I had my phone. There was a clear path back, so I walked towards him. When I got about 15 meters away, he turned. Just turned. No rushing, no acknowledgement of me, and walked into the trees. Not down a path, into the trees. The undergrowth is thick there, bramble, fallen branches, dense. You don't just casually step into it. He stepped into it. And within a few seconds, he was gone. I stood where he'd been standing. There were no tracks. The ground was soft. We had had rain earlier that week, and the earth was muddy in patches. He'd been standing there for at least 20 minutes. There were no footprints. I am a methodical person. I looked carefully. I widened my search. I walked into the tree line to where I'd seen him disappear. Nothing. No broken undergrowth, no mud on brambles, no sign that anything had passed through. I went back to my camera. I packed up, walked back to my car. I haven't told you the last part yet. When I got home, I downloaded the images, scrolled through the shots from that morning. I always shoot a test frame when I first set up. Check exposure, check the composition, make sure everything is right. In the test frame and the first image I shot before I'd noticed him, he's there, 30 meters away between the trees, clear enough to make out the dark coat and posture. And it looks like it's hard to tell at that distance and in that light, but it looks like he's facing my camera. He was there before I was. I hadn't seen him when I'd arrived. I'd been standing there for several minutes setting up, and he was already there, watching me from the moment I walked in. I still go out shooting. I love my work and I won't stop. But I check the tree lines when I arrive now, every time before I set up. The last story for tonight comes from a man I call Patrick. He's 61 from County Durham. He's been a foul runner for 30 years, has raced across some of the most remote terrain in the north of England. He's never asked for help on a run in his life. He asked for help that day. No one came, and in his words, the path that brought me back to the same place. I know the fouls. I know them the way some people know their own street. 30 years of running up there has given me a map in my head that I would trust over any compass. I need you to understand that before I tell you what happened, because what happened makes no sense to anyone who knows me. This was 2 summers ago. A route I've run probably 100 times, up through the stretch of the old pine plantation, on the lower slopes, out into a fell, a long ridge, and back down in a different way. 4 hours roughly, well within my comfort zone. I was about 50 meters into the pine section, heading uphill, when the path branched unexpectedly. I say unexpectedly because this path does not branch. I know this path, it runs straight through the plantations with a single dogleg on the right, near the top. There is no branch lower down, but there was a branch. A clear track heading left and uphill towards the pines, well worn, looked established. I was puzzled but not concerned. Paths get rerouted sometimes. Forestry Commission changes things. I took the left-hand branch because it was heading in the right general direction. About 20 minutes later, I came out into a small clearing. I stopped. I knew this clearing. It's at the 50-minute mark on my route. It's where I'd been about 20 minutes before, where the path had branched. I'd walked uphill for 20 minutes through the dense pine woodland and arrived back at the point I'd started. I checked my watch, my GPS, my bearing. According to everything, I had walked northeast for 20 minutes and was now at the same coordinates I'd been at when I took the branch, which is impossible. I took the right-hand branch this time, the one I should have taken originally. 20 minutes later, I was back in the clearing. I stood there for a long time. I am a 61-year-old and I have never been lost, not once, not in 30 years of running the far more complex terrain than this. I tried a third time, straight on, no branch at all, pushing directly uphill through the trees and off the path. 20 minutes, clearing. I sat down on a log, did what I've always told myself I'd do if I was ever genuinely lost. I stopped. I breathed. I didn't panic. I shouted for help. 3 times, loud as I could. Pines swallowed the sound almost immediately. No echo, no response. I sat there for what I think was 40 minutes, and my sense of time was completely wrong that day. And then, without deciding to, I stood up and walked. Not in any particular direction. I just walked. I came out of the plantation 10 minutes later, onto the correct path, the dog leg at the top, exactly where it should be, like nothing had happened. I finished the run. I said nothing to anyone. When I tried to find a branch in the path on a subsequent run, just to understand what had happened, it wasn't there. I've been back 4 times. The path runs straight, with a single dog leg at the top. There is no branch. I don't know what happened in those pines. I don't know how I came back to the same point 3 times. I don't know why the sound of my voice died the way it did when I called for help. I don't know where I was for those 40 minutes. What I do know is this. One of my runs in the months afterwards, I mentioned it to an older local man I sometimes see up there. I told him what happened and where exactly. He nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. He said, "Aye, that section of the plantation. A few folk have had funny time up there over the years." I asked him what he meant by a funny time. He just shook his head. "Just don't stop moving. If you end up there again, just keep moving. Don't stop. Don't sit down." So I thanked him. He walked on. I've taken that advice, and I have not run through those pines since. 4 stories, 4 people who went into the woods. Not all of them came back the same. There's something in the woods, do something that they've always done, that we don't quite have a word for. Not danger, not haunting, something older than both. A reminder that there are places that don't quite belong to us, no matter how many times we walk through them. If something has happened to you out there, send it in. The email's in the description. Every story on this channel is real. Subscribe for new stories, and if you know someone who would love the woods, send them this. Let them listen tonight before their next walk. Take care of yourselves. Whatever you hear out there, don't whistle back. Good night.